Hi, I'm Jeff Walter, and welcome back to the Training Impact Podcast. My guest today is Tom Meyers. Tom is the technical training manager for the XL Truck Group, a multi unit, multi brand dealer that offers new and used trucks and trailers, as well as maintenance, repair, collision, specialty engineering, fleet support, and a whole lot more that we'll learn about as we talk. Tom, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, so Tom, I always like to start off with the journey that people take to get where they're at in life. So, how'd you end up as the technical training manager at XL Truck, and tell us a little bit more about what XL Truck Group does.
Okay. Well, I guess I need to kind of start my whole career. I won't go through all of it. It's very long, but I've been in some sort of mechanical industry for 50 years. Started out 15 years old at a gas station, worked my way up to their head lead tech. I ended up decided to work on heavy equipment and trucks, did that for a while. Eventually, we lived up in Illinois. We decided to move to South Carolina. Started out in the automotive world down here when I moved and kind of got bored with that. Decided to go into the forklift industry. Had never worked on a forklift per se. There, I started out as a tech, ended up as a trainer, and then eventually the technical training manager of Lift One. Did that within the total 5 year span that I was there. 3 years ago, I got recruited by Excel to become their technical training manager. And that's how I ended up here in a very short time frame. What I do for Excel is we have about 380 technicians. I manage every one of their individual development plans from the time they're hired till the time they retire or leave us, along with three other trainers, technical trainers, including myself. I also do training in classroom training, and I do that for the entire organization. So we have 13 locations on the truck side and 5 locations on the case equipment side.
And so that's a lot of locations, a lot of folks. You know, as I said to you earlier, a lot of times, a lot of these episodes we're talking from the OE perspective and their training managers and trying to get programs so folks can service and sell. So from your perspective, what are you trying to accomplish with training? What's what kind of impact you trying to have, or what are you hoping to achieve with the training that your techs are going through?
So I guess part of that has to do with the kind of level of technician that we're hiring. So that has become a very small group as time has gone on because there's less people getting into the industry. So everybody wants the guy that has 30 years of experience somewhere, but it's hard to steal that guy from someplace else. So we've gone as far as hopefully being able to hire somebody right out of high school to come work for us. So very green. So we want to teach them from the ground up, you know, everything there is to know, teach them the right way to do things, or I should say our way. Everybody thinks their way is the right way, and grow that person into a journeyman technician and go from there. Depending if they have any experience, we need to get them to understand the difference between if they came from the automotive side to the Freightliner side. And then above all of that, we need to get them factory certified. So that is a goal that is required by Freightliner for us to accomplish with all of our technicians.
And so there's the brand certification, the factory certified, but is that enough? Like you say, you're focusing on more the bringing people into the industry. What are some of the challenges with that? And is getting them factory certified enough to get them where they need to be for you as the employer? Right, this you guys are the actual employer.
So realistically, factory training is never enough. It
Okay,
is not in depth enough. And unfortunately, it's also one of those things that you do online training, prerequisite to go to class. You come to class, that's typically 4 to 5 days worth of training. And if you don't go back to your shop and immediately work on something that you just went through class on,
right.
you're going to lose it. So the challenge there is to come up with courses that we do internal that are not part of Freightliner so that we can keep these guys energized and understanding everything as far as new technology that's coming out. And we do that on a regular basis. So we have some of our own internal classes to challenge the technicians when they come to those classes.
I mean, it's interesting that you say that 'cause I spent a lot of time with the OEM training managers, member of the ATMC, the Training Managers Council. And, I remember in the last convention down in Georgia last spring, there was a really interesting discussion. And I don't know what the right answer is, but it was a really interesting discussion in terms of, you know, they're focused on their brands and their products and being able to teaching folks to service their products and they were having a really interesting discussion debate about how far down do you go to the general theory, let's say, like, this is how an engine works, this is how transmission works, the general theory, how far down do you go into that versus say, specifically with our vehicles, this is how you change the brake pads, right? Like, because if you just do that, you're assuming the person has that general knowledge and skill, and then they can apply it to the particular. And so I'm curious from your perspective, how do you see that with Freightliner in case and other brands you've worked with over the years doesn't have, in terms of what are those, what's the nature of those courses that you need to build?
So on the Freightliner side, I don't know anything about the case side.
Yeah.
But from Heister Yale, right? They concentrate on their piece of equipment, so to speak. I'm the trainer that I want to make sure that they understand the theory. So I'm more of a theory driven person. So once the course becomes mine to teach,
Right.
after I've done my certification with Freightliner, I can kind of tweak it a little bit. So I want to make sure they understand theory because I've always been a theory person. If I understand the theory of how something works, I can diagnose it and you can apply that theory to anything, so realistically, a fuel system on a diesel engine's a fuel system on any diesel engine, right? Today, everybody has high pressure common rail. I just need to know all the players that are in that particular part, and then I can figure out how to diagnose it. So a charging system's a charging system, a starting system's a starting system. As long as I understand the theory of how it's supposed to operate, I just need to know the players in the game and I can diagnose that. So I make sure that our guys understand theory. And I think they can take that to any aspect of what they're trying to do.
Now, and now look, flipping it from the other side, I was just talking to someone focused on talking about the vocational training. The folks coming out of the secondary programs or the vocational programs, and or some of the work, state sponsored work training programs. And she was talking about the challenge of aligning those with industry. Like, where do you see a gap there as folks are coming out of, say, the young adults coming out of those programs where they've gone through, some level of training, but now they're in your shop, and obviously they need the factory training, but where do you see that? Is there a gap there, or how do you bridge the gap? Is a better way of thinking of it.
So there is a gap. And what we've tried to do, so we have a couple of vocational centers around the Charlotte area at one of our dealerships. We have actually partnered with them so
Okay.
that we will actually hire, say somebody out of high school, they need to apply. We will hire them as an apprentice, so to speak, or an employee. And then they are going to go to that vocational center and get training. So they'll be there for 2 to 3 weeks. Then they're going to come to us and work in our shop for 2 to 3 weeks. Then they're going to go back to class for 2 to 3 weeks. And by the time this is all done, it's a 2 year program. Not only are they a better tech when they graduate, they also end up with an associate's degree.
Right.
So as time goes on going forward, and we've all seen some sort of degree has some sort of merit to it. And we can grow that person. So they're getting the theory on the vocational side. So we don't have to worry about that. We're going to show them the true hands-on real world learning experience when they're in the shop.
And what's been your experience with that type of onboarding with that type of employee versus somebody that didn't go through that program?
The ones that go through that program are a little bit further ahead,
Uh-huh.
depending on what that other person's background is. They may have kind of learned, I call it the school of hard knocks.
Right.
They've learned it the hard way, doing something wrong or whatever, gone from shop to shop to shop, right? The one coming out of that vocational center has the theory and then the real world hands-on, and they seem to be a little bit more adjusted and understand the reason behind training going forward, where the person that has come from the school of hard knocks has the attitude, well, you know what? I just learned this, my way, and I don't need any training. I'll just figure it out.
Right, right. I've been self-reliant,
Yeah,
which actually, on the one hand, which is hard, but it's amazing how many tools are available today just to every individual. But sometimes you need more than a YouTube video.
absolutely. I can say when I started out in my career, unfortunately, there was a lot of the school of hard knocks. There wasn't as much at disposal when I first started compared to what it is today.
Yeah. Do you notice a difference in retention or anything along those lines? Like if you bring people in through those different avenues, say let's say School of Hard Knocks and the apprenticeship, or do they have? Is it is there any difference in nature? Do they stick around longer or shorter, or is it really up to the individual?
So it kind of depends on their age.
Okay.
So if we look at the age groups, the millennials compared to I don't even know all the was it Generation X. I was a baby boomer, whatever those are, right? So there is some of that. So some of the younger people don't necessarily care about benefits and what you're offering. They'll leave you for a buck and a half and go down the street to somebody else. They're more interested in what goes in their pocket on a
Right.
weekly basis compared to what long term is there. And some of the older guys that come in, say that are in their 30s to 40s, are now going, I have to start thinking about retirement, right? So what does this company give me towards retirement and health insurance and those types of things where younger people don't necessarily think about?
So then you see it more from an age perspective or a stage of life perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Unless you turn that really young person into realizing that if you stay here and you work for us for 30 years, do you know how much money you will have in your 401k?
The beauty of compound interest.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. You know, I'm I'm kind of with you. I'm at the other end of that spectrum at the baby, one of the younger boomers or Gen Xers or older Gen X, depending on where you put that line. And it's like I'm looking back, I'm like, dang, that actually works.
Yeah.
Put that stuff, you put a buck away and wait a couple of decades and it turns into a couple dollars. It's amazing. So, so getting back to what are some of the other challenges? So there seems to be a gap in the training. You're getting the guys what behind the year just out of school that may have gone through a high school program or a vocational program. So they got some type of training. You got the factory training, the OE training, and it sounds like what you were saying with that there's some type of gap. You need a little bit more theory in there, which the OEs are generally. And it's interesting because that's where they were talking about is like how far down do we go in saying, hey, this is a Phillips head, this is a regular screwdriver, or as they say, plus and minus.
Yeah.
And I'm a little old school on that one, but they're having those conversations, and as they're trying to put together their curriculums to make sure, like it sounds like there's that what you were saying, the types of courses you need to build are on that more foundational level, maybe advanced from the vocational, or is like give us some.
So here's a perfect example. And I don't know if it's going to be a great example, but obviously everybody thinks of a truck, semi, right? Has a diesel engine, transmission, yada, yada, yada. We do actually, Freightliner makes an fully electric tractor.
Okay.
Okay. So that is a 400-volt electric tractor that's capable of doing about 300 miles, depending on load size. So it's pretty impressive. So think about all the electronics that are involved in that. So you aren't taking somebody that knows, that, the positive cable goes on the right and the negative cable goes on the left. Now we have to worry about 400 volts can kill you.
Right. Yeah.
How do we convert 400 volts DC to drive an AC motor? So understanding all of that theory and how that operates and how that works, you can see that there's more than just basic electrical there. And those are some of the to make sure that we understand all that. And realistically today, the electronics in a truck is nothing like it was 30 years ago. So, I mean, they have all of the same capabilities of an automobile for collision avoidance, automatic braking, ABS, lane departure, all of that. So we have electronics is where everybody has gone. So understanding basic electric is important, but then they also have to understand how all of this stuff communicates to one another.
So what are some of the other challenges you're facing? Oh, you've got, I think you said 22 locations. They're pretty spread out geographically. What are some of the other challenges? Getting finding that it sounds to me like one of the challenges is there's a gap in content between the schools and the factory, right? And you're filling in that gap in content. And it seems to be, if I hear you, applied theory. They got a theory out of the school to a certain degree, but then applying it in a certain situation, like the 100-volt truck. Yeah, they might have learned something about electric vehicles, but now you're applying it to a massive tractor,
Right.
right? And with 400 volts, that you know can really mess you up if you touch the wrong thing. Or same thing with the engines too, and the transmissions. Like I learned the theory of how a diesel works. I might have worked on one a little bit, but now I'm going to apply that theory. And then the OE, if I can summarize that back, the OE is really primarily focused on, well, this is how you do the thing with my transmission, my brakes, my engines, and so here's the application without the theory. Here's the theory with the application. It sounds like the gap is that the courses you guys are creating, or when you take on a course that you teach, where you expand, is that apply what I would say applied theory. Is that a good?
Yeah, that's a good explanation of it. So we want to make sure. So I mean, we do a Detroit engine class, and we tear down an engine, we put it back together so that they understand all of it. We go over all the components. There's a separate fuel system class, and then so that's the Detroit engine. We also do the same thing with a Cummins engine. So we
Okay.
we do that as well. So we will make sure that you know, eh, those are the two major engines that are in our trucks. We make sure we cover all of them so that they understand because there are differences. Not everything is created equal, similar but not equal. And we make sure that they understand the differences. And it's truly hands-on. And I don't know, I would say most technicians learn with doing stuff hands-on. They don't learn it in a book, right? So they see it in the book, but then they need to apply it right away so that it sticks. So there's a lot of hands-on with all of our courses. And then we even bug them. So here's a real world bug, a complaint that the driver brought it in for. You need to figure out what's wrong with it. And then we walk them through, if they can't figure it out, how to diagnose that. And that is stuff that they're going to see every day.
And with the 22 dealerships spread around the country, how do you deal with the? I mean, one of the big challenges is that hands on, right? It's like you've got those engines to break down, but they're in a specific location, and getting to that location time and money, right? It's not just the time in the training, but it's actually getting there and back. So how do you got, how do you address that issue? Or or how have you addressed that
Well,
issue?
so our training department is different than most. So all of our training equipment is portable
Uh-huh.
and we have trailers. So we will load up a tear down engine, a running engine, put that in a trailer, and we will go and put a class on at one of our other locations, say in Virginia, and we will bring technicians in from the Virginias. So, and we train in multiple locations in the Virginias, and my trainers and myself, we tow trailers that have 2 to 3 engines in them or chassis equipment. So we have a entire dash out of a new Cascadia that is a training aid where it has roll up windows, the entire dash, all the wiring, the whole 9 yards. So it is
Uh-huh.
just like working on a truck, and we will take that and we can bug that like a truck, and they use that for the hands-on part of it so that we don't necessarily have to rip apart a customer's truck. We'll screw up our training aid, and we have lots of training aids. So we have an entire air brake board where we will disassemble the entire air brake system, and the technicians have to physically put it back together and make it work.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. And you said earlier, going back to something earlier, you said you get certified to teach Freightliner courses.
Mhm.
So that's interesting. So help me understand that? How does that work? How does a dealer technical training manager or technical trainer get certified from the OE
Okay,
to
so
teach the class?
right. So on the Freightliner side, you will have to have gone through every class as a technician first.
Right.
So once you've accomplished that, then you actually are eligible to go to New Instructor Training Academy with Freightliner. So you will go to a location. They have an entire 2 week course where you are going to perform as a trainer in front of trainers, and they will critique you to make you better
Hmm.
and go through different types of scenarios, and they pretty much put you on the line. It's pretty brutal, but it makes you better. And once you graduate, then you're capable of going to, let's say you want to do a basic electric class is your first one that you're going to teach.
Right.
You actually have to go observe that as a trainer to another trainer's class. And
Right.
then once you get through that, then you get to do 2 practices by yourself with, technicians, and then you have to certify. So another trainer will come in to observe your class and critique you while you're doing that class. And when you pass, you are certified to do that all on your own going forward.
And is it at the individual class level?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So
So, yeah. So they have quite a few classes, and you have to do that same process for every one of their classes.
okay, but first you got to go through the curriculum. You as a student have to go through the curriculum
Yep. Before
so
you're
that
even eligible.
you have the breadth of knowledge,
Yep.
and then you go. So because I got a book coming out. I'm a big believer in the learn, do, teach. Like, let me learn it, then let me do it, and then you really master things when you teach it to others because they ask you things you never thought of because you just
Absolutely.
and it's one of the things I've been a proponent of as I've been talking to my clients and others is like, where's the mentoring? The and I mean the formalized mentoring or the teaching where the student becomes the teacher, not just back at headquarters going out into the field, but the guys in the field that you're blessing as experts so that they can go and do it. And so it's really interesting listening to you. I wasn't aware of that program at Freightliner.
Yeah.
Haven't seen that.
Well,
So it's really
something that
interesting.
made me probably better to understand this was when I was at the forklift company, I also did technical support.
Okay.
So if you ever want to know how much you don't know or do know, try to explain to a technician on the phone how to figure out and fix something,
Without being able to see it.
right? Because you can't see it, you can't touch it, you have nothing. You are strictly listening to somebody on the other end of the phone and trying to direct them
Hmm.
into the right area to figure out what is wrong with that piece of equipment. So it made me better as a listener,
Mhm.
and then being able to also describe what I want them to do and then tell me the result so that we can go forward. So that whole process really changed the way that I look at things or describe things to technicians, even in my class when they can see me. That helped me grow as an instructor immensely.
Huh. Very that's yeah, yeah, well, because you're I mean, I'm just as soon as you mentioned that, um, I love my mother, God bless her, and she is a spry woman in her 80s and wants to know everything about every piece of technology, and trying to describe how to do something with your iPhone over the phone.
Yep.
Yeah, as soon as you said that, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that is such a it's such a skill." 'Cause you really have to know the thing you're talking about to be able to explain it and not just say, "No, right here, over here, this thing, point right here, touch that thing," right? That's really interesting. So, sh just exploring the certified trainer thing a little bit more. So so I assume as a certified trainer, then you're training your staff. Or are you putting on or are you participating in training or try to say, are you, running classes for other dealer staff?
So all of our classes are listed in Freightliner's LMS
Right.
on a calendar, and they are open to anybody that is a Freightliner dealer across the country.
Okay, so it does go cross.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. So I've had people. I just had a group here from Texas a couple weeks ago here in Rock Hill that attended one of our training classes from another dealership. They had 6 people here.
Oh, that's all. So I would assume you're creating the offering when I'm assuming you're creating it when it's makes sense for your network, your dealers. But then, hey, if I got a dozen people that need that course, but I can fit 20, I got 8 open seats.
I wish we could do that many. Freeliner doesn't limit it to 6 people in a class. But yes,
Okay.
I build our calendar around our needs, but
Right.
then it's open to the entire organization. So if I'm doing a class that would help somebody at another dealership, they're more than welcome to attend that class.
And that I mean, I think that's awesome. It's something I've been a proponent of. Well, 'cause it again, it's challenging the trainer, right? It's building a network of trainers that are not on your payroll, but are actually out in the field, and they're the problem with the trainers back at headquarters is they're not doing the work anymore. They become the professors, you know what I'm saying? In the universities that aren't turning a wrench and aren't close to it.
Yeah.
I think it's just a great way to get it's the whole learn to teach, like I said. It's like you get that person and you become a
And
certified expert.
right. And part of the reason why
That's really
Freightliner
cool.
does it this way is so that if I have somebody attending one of my classes or I send one of my techs to somebody else's class in a different state, the goal here was to make sure that regardless of whose class you were attending, you were getting the same level of training from that instructor. So we network internally. There's about 100 and I think 85 or so, maybe more in the entire training network, the Freightliner training network across the country and Canada. And so we all communicate to one another. We have meetings and things like that. So the goal here is to make sure that the courses that we are teaching, you're getting the same training regardless of who's teaching the class.
Right, right. It's the same syllabi,
Yep.
and they're picking up the same knowledge and skills. And the only difference is the difference you have with any two instructors teaching the same course, right? Everybody's got their take on it, but that is so cool. So I'm curious. Yeah, I'm going to put my cynic hat on for a second because these are the questions they get asked to me when I bring
Okay.
things like this up. Well, why would Excel Truck want to have their people spend their time training other dealers' people? Like, what's in it for Excel? Do you know what I'm saying?
I guess so we do charge, so we get that revenue into the training department for them to come to our class. Same
Okay.
thing as if our guys go to one of their classes. So there is, everybody charges for training. So there is no downside to it. It's
Right.
not like we're training competition. So all the dealer groups have, their OARs that
Right.
we deal with. So I'm not training competition. And who's to say that a truck that we worked on today doesn't end up at one of the other dealerships 3 weeks from now, because these things travel cross country.
Right.
And, realistically, I hope that that dealership has just as well a trained technicians as we do.
Well,
So
so
we're hoping for the same service.
yeah, well, so let me understand what you just said there on the monetary side. So let's just for say a course is so at Freightliner, a certain course would be $100. Just throw a number out. So if you're running the class, does that mean when your staff enrolls, it's free or is it free?
Internally,
Yeah, like let's say you're going to run one of these classes and it's $100 a student,
mhm.
and you've got three and internal folks and three external folks. Is there a cost savings for Excel truck for the three folks that the Excel instructors? Do you know what I'm saying? Do they get any?
So depending on location, right?
Yeah,
The savings would be the fact that the technician hasn't had to travel.
right,
Okay.
right,
Internally, obviously P&Ls and all of that corporate stuff. I will be billing the particular dealership for that technician to be in the class. Realistically, the training department is kind of its own separate entity as well. Um,
right. Okay,
and we
so
want to track internally in the company. They want to track how much money is being spent on training at each location, so they have a budget for training, and
gotcha.
so that's how we track it internally. And then obviously externally, we're going to charge those guys $100 to be in our class as well. But I'm not worried about where that's
Yeah, well, so if we look at that example of six people, three that are part of the network, three that are employees, three that aren't. The class is going. You're still going to get the $600 for the class. The difference is the three internal guys. It's an internal accounting thing, right? This department, spends $100 per employee to fund this other department. Same as if they had gone to an external class,
right.
right? So, but net for the group, it's zero, right? Because
Hmm.
it goes from one bucket to another. But
Right.
then 300 tuition from the external students stays within Excel, and nothing's going to Freightliner. Like they're not.
Nope. Nope.
Yeah. So that answers the question. Is well, one, if you, it's interesting. I haven't come across this. Um, so then the motivation for a multi-unit dealer or any dealer for that matter to do this type of to get their guys certified to train would be, well, you can conduct these classes when you're training your folks. There's an internal accounting, but net you're keeping the money in the family, as it were. There can be some incremental revenue, and your staff gets the benefit of having access to the instructor 24/7, right? Because I got to imagine that you get a lot of interaction with internal learner students versus say the external.
Right.
You know,
Exactly. Exactly. So that is a relationship you're constantly building
yeah,
with our own technicians. So the reason why not all dealers across the country have done this is that there's a huge cost
yeah,
for training aids and all of that to purchase to be able to do this training. Excel and other dealers across the country have realized that even though that there's a huge cost, it actually pays off in the long run to be able to do it internally, so to speak.
yeah. Well, especially if you're a multi-unit operator, yeah, a multi-unit dealer, right? Because then you can pick the location. You know when your people need certain types of training, you can pick the location. You save all on that travel. which is not just it's just the expense and the people's time, right? And the hotel stays and and feeding them and all that kind of stuff. And that's huge. But then also you're getting a higher quality, a you know, a a quality of training that's geared specifically to what you guys are doing and can, and then there's some incremental revenue to help out offset other training costs. But yeah, you got to make it a bit. I could see that. But that's really interesting. That's really I really like that. That because it gets that because I like the fact that the program allows you to go not just your people but across and then sets up, you get entrance to the club of other dealer trainers, right? Or other trainers. And so then that allows you to take your knowledge that much further, but that's all within that's not back at headquarters or at the OE training center. That's that's local to the dealer network. That's that's really cool. I really like that. That's again just because I'm a big fan of this learn do teach.
Yeah, and then once a year, Freightliner does sponsor, put on a technical training update. So we will go, all the trainers will meet somewhere, go over new material, things like that. And so that we do all get together, spend some time together. It's really, it is interesting and it's a really cool network to be part of.
Yeah. Now, have you guys looked at that? Yeah, that's really now. Does Case do anything like that,
I
or you just don't know yet?
I don't know yet.
Yeah. Okay.
So from on the case equipment side, all the OEs are doing 90% of that training,
Hmm.
so that's done at case headquarters, so to speak.
Yeah, or service,
Yeah.
technical centers.
Yep, yep. But we don't do any of that internally. So, and I haven't quite figured out that whole nuance yet. So that the equipment company with us is relatively new, probably like 8 months or so right now. So I'm still learning their LMS and figuring out how to get technicians into training and working on their development plans. So that is something that I do on the Excel truck side. I have a development plan worked out for every technician we have here, and I'm doing that now on the case equipment side or Excel equipment side as well.
Yeah, just as a note, I think you said you all recently acquired the Case
Yep.
dealers, so that's all new to the organization. In case people are wondering, hey, why haven't they figured this out? It's because it's all new.
It takes time and to understand all of it, and it's another LMS that I deal with. Every OEM manufacturer that we get training through or have guys signed up in is a different LMS.
Uh
So
huh.
everybody has their own quirky way of doing things and allowing you to have admin rights. Admin rights on one LMS is not necessarily the same admin rights in another one. So that's a challenge all on its own.
And so you said, Freightliner and Case. So are you dealing with more than two LMSs, or what other
Oh yeah.
brands are you
So
dealing?
So I have a Freightliner LMS. I have a Case LMS. I have a Mac. So a couple of our dealers are also Mac dealers. So
Oh, okay.
they have their own LMS. Allison Transmission, which Allison Transmissions are in trucks. So they have their own LMS. Eaton, which is a transmission that would be in a Freightliner, depending on the engine. They have their own LMS. Cummins, they have their own LMS. So, I mean, that was what.
And Detroit Diesel?
No, so luckily that's part of Freightliner, so that one's fine, but you can kinda see the amount of different LMSs I'm involved in, and if depending on training, how to get those guys into specific manufacturer training, so we can't do all of it in-house.
Right.
So, Allison, we don't do in-house. Eaton, we don't do in-house. A lot of the Cummins, we do in-house. Mac, we don't do in-house, and Case, we don't do in-house.
Yeah. Now, on the ones that you say you don't do in house, is that because the program doesn't exist within the brand,
Yeah,
or
they
is
don't allow us.
okay?
If they did, trust me, we would be all over it.
Right, right.
I would much rather do training in-house than having to send guys away, but you know.
Yeah. Interesting. And I just got to imagine that that is just feels a better way of doing things. Like, well, I mean, thinking from the OE standpoint, like if you can put in place the process to ensure the quality of the instruction, right? I mean, you got to start with that. Then having a network of trainers that are not on your payroll, that are dispersed across, the continents, um, that it to me, it just sounds like a great idea, and it's and that has benefit on so many levels. And it's interesting. I'm going to bring that up. We have another client that's chipper, a shredder company. And they have it's a classic mid tier, OEM, although equipment manufacturer, and it's like they're going gangbusters. They have a training department. They have a number of trainers. They're all going nuts, hopping on planes, flying everywhere, like just because they do a good job, right?
Mhm.
And it's like I'm sitting there going like, hey, if you built out a certification program for trainers, you can leverage the dealers, and then you know, hey, you guys, you don't have enough people flying around all over the place. You don't have to fly around all over the place. Your dealers don't have to don't have to send people all over the place. I like it a lot. I really like that. That's really cool. Any shifting gears a little, looking into the future. I was at ATMC last spring, and there was a guy from just talking about AI, but there was or VR or any of that. There was the guy from Design Interactive. I think is Matt. Yeah, Matt Johnston, I think his name was. But about the you know, uh, not the virtual reality glasses, but the augmented reality glasses. And he was talking about using it in training. I don't know. Were you there?
No, I did not make that one. That was something that came up at our TTU last year in Texas
Yeah,
when we were all together, was the use of VR goggles and things like that. So there's been some talk about it. They're working on it. It isn't perfected just yet. I'm not we kind of demoed it there. There's been some more communication on it. I don't know if some or one dealer has actually been demoing it and trying to help, push development of it. I've seen, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 different phases of that over the years. So that's been tried by a couple of different auto people where you had glasses on and part of the lens you could actually see like a wiring schematic and things like that. There was something where you could actually like look at the truck
yeah,
or a vehicle and the wiring would come up in the goggles and overlay it on the truck. So that's what Freightliner's kind of working on, that you are up at a truck and you are trying to see how the wiring goes.
yeah,
That will come up in the VR goggles or whatever while you're actually staring at the truck, and you could see all of that. So that they are trying to push that envelope and see where it goes. I don't know where I stand on it just yet.
yeah. Well, there was some futuristic stuff. So when I was at the conference, there was some futuristic stuff like what you're talking about, right? Like where you're looking at a set of brakes, and it's like you go, oh, this is a Toyota Land Cruiser, and blah blah blah. But Matt, and it was so simple. It was, and his use case was there were augmented reality classes, but for instructor led training, and that you could have the students dispersed geographically at like a local training center, and the instructor could, you know, through the classes, do the instruction, but then the instructor could control which view. All the glasses had cameras on them, and then the instructor could control which camera was operating at a given time. So that if like a student raised their hand and said, "Oh, I'm having difficulty getting to the starter," on what I'm working on, it's kind of under here, and getting back into that, um, tech support thing, it's not exactly where you said it is,
Right.
and he could like flip a switch, and then all of a sudden everybody saw that student's view, and then the instructor could walk them through, but then all the other students saw it also. And it was so interesting because I thought it was such a simple thing relative to all the wiring diagrams popping up, like the things you were saying. That's like, yeah, that's like something you see in a movie, right? Like, yeah, you put the glass, like Minority Report, you put the glasses on, you start doing this.
Right.
Um, and I thought that was just, but I thought that was so interesting in that it was so basic yet so powerful. If we could figure out, especially with hands-on stuff, right? Now, in that case, the case he was saying, everybody had a training engine in front of them, right? So they could they just went to their local place, but then you can. So I thought that was kind of interesting, you know. Um, but I we'll see how it turns out. I don't
Yeah.
know.
They're
I don't know.
working on it.
Yeah.
It's not there yet. They actually have tested where, you know, on a Freightliner, the transmission is called the DT-12.
Hmm.
They actually have that on in the goggles, and you can disassemble it, virtually and take pieces off of it where you're actually having to pick up the impact gun, put the socket on it, take the which bolts out at which time and things like that. It just if you we were the one guy was messing around with it and he dropped the bolt on the ground, just didn't put it in the tray, and that really kind of froze the program. Didn't understand that he dropped it on the ground. So
I don't know what to do. I don't know what
yeah,
to do.
so I mean, it was interesting, and I can see where some of that would work well
Hmm.
once we perfect the little weird, quirky things that could work. The younger people really gravitate towards that because they've been playing video games and things like that. So they have a tendency to gravitate towards that. So that's kind of the goal is that we have to figure out a way to get younger people interested. So we have to kind of dial into what they're used to. Where older, more seasoned technicians, right? They're not going to be interested in that because it's technology. You know, some of us struggle with cell phones and all that other kind of stuff, so it's kind of geared more towards the newer generation to pique interest. That's always a goal to try to figure out how we can get younger people involved in any of these industries,
Hmm.
depending on not just trucks, right? It could be the automotive world, the heavy equipment side, doesn't matter. Just trying to get people into this world, so to speak, is becoming it's always a challenge. Fewer and fewer every year. I don't know what the average age of technicians here at Excel, but I'm going to say it's at least the upper 40s,
Uh-huh.
lower 50s, the average age. So, that's, we got to figure out a plan because eventually there isn't going to be anybody, right? We aren't going to have enough people to backfill all of those spots. So that's probably one of our biggest challenges.
And on that challenge, is it a recruiting challenge or a retention challenge in your
It's
are we not getting enough in the funnel, or are they just not staying? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so this goes back to when I was in high school, I think. So that was in the late 70s. You have high school counselors, right, that are pushing you towards college,
Right.
pushing you towards college. They still do that today, push you towards college. You need a degree. You need some sort of degree. Where if they went to say 2 year, junior college or something out of high school and learned a trade,
Right.
they would be in the long run, I think, better off. I've been doing this for 50 years and there hasn't been one day that I've been out of a job. So, unfortunately, there's other fields where people have been laid off, can't get a job, things like that. This industry, you will always have a job. Robots may be able to build it, but they can't fix it.
Well,
Any any trade.
I think I have a feeling like that is shifting.
Yeah, it's slowly.
Slowly shifting in that I think we're as a society building a greater appreciation for skilled technicians in the broadest sense. we're and I mean technician from the perspective of somebody that learns a technique. The true sense of the word. They learn these techniques and then they use their hands to implement these techniques on a physical thing to do something. And whether it's lab technicians or automotive technicians or vehicle like there I just feel like it's gaining more credence because you're right. Like we need that. Like somebody's got to build. Somebody's got to build the buildings. Somebody's got to repair the the equipment. So like no matter. I mean, I was a computer science guy, so I'm virtual software dude, and I run a software company. So it's but we are physical beings living in a physical world, and we need physical things, and those things need to be built and maintained, and they're getting more sophisticated, and therefore the skills of the technician become more and more sophisticated. Like you were mentioning before, it's like, oh, it's almost like vehicles today are big, heavy, rolling iPhones.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, there's so much freaking technology in them right now, so much advanced technology in them, and it's, you
Yeah,
know,
so my wife who, she drove a school bus for 35 years. She drove kids to a vocational center and she got to talking to some of the teachers and things like that. And I love my wife dearly. She got into discussions with them and said, my husband has probably gone through more training and classes than you ever have or will. And they looked at her like, what are you talking about? I've got this degree. I got a teaching degree. She goes, my husband probably goes through anywhere between 40 and 50 hours of training a year.
right,
And he's been doing that for 30 plus years already. And they were like dumbfounded and didn't realize that,
right,
and it's never ending. Technology in vehicles changes rapidly compared to the human body
yeah,
or, the book, right? It is evolving quicker than anything else. And, you got to stay on top of it.
and I think we're getting there as a society to appreciate the skill needed to do those things. And certainly, like, I'm just amazed when you look at the economics of it. To your point, it's like never worried about a job, and you can make a really good living, like really good living.
Yeah.
And
But
it's
there's a
amazing.
huge investment that goes along with that as well. So the downside to being a technician is you have to buy all your own tools, and that can get very expensive. And depending on who you work for, they may or may not pay for training.
Right.
So that's another out of pocket expense. But if you want to be the best of the best, sometimes you have to invest in yourself,
Yeah.
and that's the way I looked at it going through all the years.
Yeah. Yeah. I think those. Yeah, I'm more taking the long term view. Like
Yeah.
those are things that can be uh, changed or mitigated or like or addressed over time. Like immediately as soon as you say that, I'm like, gee, I wonder if you can use what is it? What's the educational savings accounts, the 503Bs or something like that, whatever they are. Hey, can you use that? Like, can you use that to buy your tools? Like, you know,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we used to be able to deduct tools that you can't do that anymore. So, that was a depressing year for me, you know.
or the other thing is, as you look at, the other thing is that like dealer groups and folks like that are getting larger. It's not just mom and pop anymore, right?
Nope,
And the tools are not just a wrench and a screwdriver.
nope.
They're getting much more sophisticated and expensive. And so it's interesting because, actually I never thought about this, but if I think about on the medical device side, we have a client that makes robotic surgical equipment for the brain, and another one does the laser surgery, the machines that do
LASIK or
LASIK
whatever.
surgery. Yeah, laser. And the interesting thing is, I found this interesting. It's kind of going to the tool thing is they sell it to the medical centers, but it's used by the surgeons. And I wonder if in other, and so it was an interesting conundrum from a training perspective and all that is like the piece of equipment, it's a large capital piece of equipment. It's expensive. So they're not expecting the docks to buy them. There's- But, and I wonder if if we're getting to the point with you know, I mean, buying your own tools was one thing 50 years ago when you needed, wrenches and screwdrivers and, a voltmeter to make sure there was some, juice flowing through the wires, right? And a torque wrench.
Yeah.
And, not so much anymore, right? And I'm just wondering if that paradigm will shift. I wouldn't be surprised if it did. Just like I wouldn't be surprised if the whole 4-year university paradigm shifts. Because I think we're going through I mean, shifting my hat, I think we're as a society going through well, what is really the value of that? Because it's really it's expensive in terms of time and money,
Yep.
and with so much advances in training technology, and I mean, geez, you can learn so much about so many things without ever stepping foot in a school,
Yeah.
right? And it like and with just the investment of your time
True.
that we couldn't do when we were kids, right? Like, back then it's like, well, if you could go to the library and read the World Book Encyclopedia, you can learn a lot, but you couldn't really learn a lot.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
we didn't have the internet, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We didn't have much TV.
Come on, there were 3 channels.
Yeah, well, only if you held the antenna right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, the whole thing has come
Yeah.
immensely. Uh, I understand the expense that's, ginormous. Just even going to college these days is astronomical.
Yeah.
It was
Ridiculous.
astronomical when I went. I thought it was. So everything's relative. It didn't take any time for me to rack up $10,000 in debt going to college, and I never finished. I was also like you, a computer geek. I was in computer science and mechanical engineering at the same time. And look at what I ended up doing. I've been working with my hands ever since. I didn't finish, but I will say that all of that did help me become the person and the ability that I have today. So I've been able to apply all of that to what I do every day.
I think it's going to be interesting the next 10, 15 years as we see this all kind of shake out. And I wouldn't be surprised if things are reorganize themselves to rejigger themselves. But I do think it's real. I think it's fascinating. And I think to your point earlier, there is a massive global need for technicians of all stripes, skilled or more broadly, people with skills,
Yeah.
whatever those skills are. You're right at the right where the rubber hits the road. On the and I think the vehicle technician is probably one of the most sophisticated vehicles are some of the most sophisticated pieces of technology we have that are at scale. And so those technicians we need a lot of them. And
Well,
it's
yeah.
interesting. So,
If you think about how many automobiles are sold, you know, monthly, daily, yearly, however, right? What we have today in 2026 is a whole bunch different than what we had in 1970, right? So, the those of us that were able to evolve in what we have today are still doing it, So I've seen a lot in my life.
yeah.
I've been very blessed. I'm very lucky to have been in an industry or in an industry that continually changes and it's never dull. There's never been a dull moment. You know, and that's I guess what keeps me in it. Can't get bored.
Well, Tom, I think we're at a good stopping point. If anybody wanted to reach out and contact you or the folks at Excel Truck, what would be a good way for them to get a hold of you? Or
Well, the
uh,
easiest way would obviously to be use Google, right? Excel Truck Group. Uh, that comes up with all of our locations across Virginia, North Carolina and South Carolina. Even Excel equipment is in there as well. In there are phone numbers. There's a link to the training department. Um, and that's the easiest way to do it. I am on LinkedIn. So matter of fact, you found me on LinkedIn.
That's yeah, I did in that.
Yeah.
So you're on LinkedIn under with, and it's Tom Myers with Excel
Yep.
Trucker.
Absolutely.
Tom, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your experience today. I just really enjoyed it. I learned something, which is why I love doing this. So thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. It's been great. I enjoyed it.
And to everybody out there, thanks for listening. We really appreciate it, and have a great day.